You shoot me in a dream, you better wake up and apologize.
The Cinik Radio Podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast. Here are your hosts, Cinik.
We live in great times because the internet has given the world a voice, but other than complaining, it seems like they have absolutely nothing to say.
Igrihe.
It's going to be a really good time.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
IG, did we just forget Kim?
You guys completely suck.
This is the greatest show of all time.
I went into seeing Disney's latest blockbuster without ever even seeing the original, and frankly not the world's biggest fan of musicals or cartoons. Not because I wanted to, but because my pals at the podcast told me, Cinik, you need to be more open-minded. So here's some words I never thought I'd say to you all. On this week's show, the CRP is breaking down Disney's The Lion King. Ryan, with a opening weekend of $531 million worldwide for The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast scored a $1.2 billion total box office take, and Jungle Book at $966 million. Is this CGI revolution the new evolution of animation?
I mean, look, we had Pixar doing amazing things, you know, for for a couple of decades. So I don't know if it's a next revolution. I think what's interesting is it's more like the next cash grab. You know, like they obviously Disney, you know, has struck gold with all the Marvel movies, and it seems like this is the next, is take all of their old animated movies and turn them into live action. And I guess with the exception of Dumbo, they've all been pretty massive hits, regardless of quality. But, you know, I think there's obviously the cynic in me that kind of thinks that it's really just a big cash grab. And I think they've taken CGI forward, as we will talk about. But it's hard to say it's the next big thing because we've been getting, you know, it's been building towards this. I think it's just a matter of like, it's almost like a mishmash of now, you know, this crazy, you know, well-known IP and, you know, some of the best CGI we've ever seen.
Yeah, but with 3 out of the 5 films being massive hits, can you be mad at them for the cash grab?
You can't, but you can still be cynical about it, you know, and I think that's one of the issues with some of these is like, did we need it? Or could we have gone somewhere completely different and made something, you know, completely original? And I think that's the bigger question is, yeah, if it makes money, it makes money. But you wonder, like, what else are we losing because we keep going back into the well for, you know, in these properties that we've seen? Like, you know, again, you know, it's kind of like if you look at something like Maleficent, which I didn't particularly like, but it's a completely different take on that story from a different perspective. Or if you look at like if they made a movie version of Wicked, it's a completely different take on the Wizard of Oz story. So I think if you give us a different perspective or a different angle, I'm more interested in it than basically just rehashing the same thing, but, you know, with better animation.
Well, I went with a buddy from work and we were surrounded by families, and I can tell you that the kids going into that movie were as excited as they were coming out, and they could give a goddamn about a cash grab or cynical critics as far as they had a good time. I thought the movie delivered. What do you think, IG, of this CGI evolution?
I think it's really reforming how they're able to do things in movies because, you know, people say live action Lion King, and there isn't one live animal in the whole thing. The whole thing is computer generated, and it's beautiful. It's hard to tell the difference between an animated lion and what a real lion would look like. And I think that it's really going to reform a lot of things in movies going forward. But again, just like Ryan was saying, the biggest problem I have is that there's no originality in this, because the problem with most of these rehashes is there is no change from the original story. If they enhanced or changed the original story and put something extra in it or something different, I'd be a little more into this, and I did enjoy it. So don't get me wrong. It was still fun to watch, and it was beautiful to look at, but I had seen it, and I saw it more than 20 years ago. And that's the biggest problem that I had with it, is that literally there was almost nothing different. And the same thing goes for Beauty and the Beast. There was almost nothing different with that. It was still fun to watch. It was really well done. It was acted well, but I had seen it. And that's the biggest problem I have. However, I will say that the familiarity is really what's bringing the money in. For example, The Force Awakens was so familiar to the original Star Wars movie that people just flocked to it. So there is something to be said about what Disney's doing. A lot of the Marvel movies follow the same type of plan to get from the beginning to the end of the movie, and even the beginning to the end of a phase. And it's working because it's familiar and it makes us all comfortable to go and watch it. So Disney knows what they're doing. And yeah, Dumbo maybe fell down a little bit, but everything else isn't. So they can throw a flop once in a while with how big everything else is going.
So you're saying Dumbo didn't fly? Hey, Ryan, one of the things I did notice after watching the movie is I sat down 25 years later than most people and watched the cartoon. And as IG was just saying, it was near identical. Do you believe they could have skirted maybe some of the cash grab criticism by changing the movie like they did with the Jungle Book?
That's where it's almost better to come up with original stuff, because they're in a tough spot. If they stray too far musically, it'll get compared unfavorably to the original. If they stray too far from the story, it's tough. Like, how do you tell that story in a different way? And granted, I think this was it seemed like it was almost shot for shot, like a remake. And I think that they could have added scenes, but for the most part, they pretty much followed it step by step. And I do think it would have benefited from maybe straying a little bit, maybe changing some of the story. I know, like Aladdin, I didn't see Aladdin, but for what I understood, some of the things that did work about it was kind of enhancing certain characters that maybe didn't get much to work with in the original movie. But even that, I think, suffered from the same issues critically, is that it was too familiar and too similar. But I do think that, giving us something new to work with, more that wasn't just a song, that also seemed like, cash grab, like this is the next hit, or Oscar song or whatever. Like, I just feel like there was just too much. There needed to be something original. They needed to add something to the story to make it feel like it really was worth it beyond, okay, a new generation of kids are going to see it. But like, honestly, I'd almost rather them see the original.
IG, one of the things that made the movie a lot more tolerable for me was the actual live animals. Even though they were CGI, they looked real life. The transformation, especially when they talked, did it take away from immersion for you, or were you fine with their mouths making words that they probably couldn't if they actually knew how to talk?
I think that's probably better than the alternative, which would either be put out sound with their mouths moving like actual animals, or subtitling the whole thing, which would take anyone under the age of 12 basically out of it. Because I don't know about you, but I know when I was 12, subtitles were out. If it had subtitles, I didn't want to watch it. Now I will. I'll watch subtitled movies all the time. Been some really great ones coming from China and stuff that have been really good to watch. But at 12, you're not going to bring the family to a theater to watch a subtitled movie that has amazing visuals, and nobody's going to get the story then at that point. It's just going to be lions fighting with each other. Yeah,
in order to do this, there's really no other way to do it. You're not going to do subtitles. And not only that, the cast really shined in this movie, so you had to have them talk. Sometimes I wonder, the overall reaction was very mixed. From IGN gave it an 8, Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 54. Do you think the backlash coming from the diehards and the critics are mostly just nostalgia driven?
I think there is a cynicism about all this. And so we want Disney to say, hey, this isn't just a cash grab. Here's something unique and original, kind of like Jungle Book. Because we didn't get that, I definitely can see where, the criticisms all seem to be around it not doing more, which I think is fair. Like, there's nothing about it being a bad movie or bad performances. If anything, it's like, this has fantastic visuals, and the biggest critique is almost that it's a little too bland, that doesn't move. It didn't bring anything new to the table. What it does bring to the table, it sets a new bar, a new standard visually. But I think for me, where I think it sounds like for you guys, you really enjoyed that, it took me out of it a little bit, because I think it was so stunning and so almost photorealistic that there are moments where it's like, no, those are real animals. And if it wasn't for them actually moving in a way that was kind of choreographed, it was like there are moments that are just stunning and real. But I didn't like that the mouths didn't have that kind of anthropomorphic animation that you can get away with that kind of traditional animation. And so I almost prefer that the traditional way, where you can get a little bit more emotion out of the animation, where this one, because you're almost by being so realistic, you're rigid and stuck in this world where it has to look a certain way. And so in that way, it almost took me out of it. It's like seeing the brain is just like, okay, something's not right. This can't be right. This can't be right. What's going on in my brain is like trying to put things together. And I spent a lot of time trying to wrap my head around it. rather than actually enjoying it. Maybe that's also something that a lot of people kind of had to struggle with watching this.
Well, I'm nostalgic about a lot of things, but it's kind of a situation where you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if you want to bring this to the masses, if you want the whole new generation of Disney fans, if they just re-release the cartoon, people would be saying the same thing. It's a cash grab. If they go in and they change the animation or brighten it up or change the voiceover cast, then you're messing with the old property. So I found this as a happy medium. And I think back to when Lucas re-released the Star Wars films, he enhanced them a little bit. And the Star Wars fans, rightfully so, I guess, lost their minds, even though they didn't actually change the movie. They didn't actually change the characters for the most part, except for Anakin at the end. But people were livid. I think this was kind of a new happy medium because it wasn't the cartoon. You didn't change any of the source material, but at the same time, you used the new technology to your advantage. What do you think, IG?
Well, first of all, the biggest thing that happened with the Star Wars re-releases is hand shot first. You know, that they messed that up. But I think that you hit the nail on the head with that. The problem is you can't change the songs. They were going to attempt to take the Be Prepared song out that Jeremy Irons did in the original one. And like there was a huge uproar about you can't take that song out. So they actually went back in and re-recorded it and put it back in the movie. And so when you try and stray too far away, then people get mad as well. So you needed to tell the story with a lot of the same stuff without getting too far off path. But then people are like, well, why are you doing this just to grab money from us? Well, the truth is we have a whole generation of people that are used to a different standard of animation. They're used to seeing different things. And they kind of have to do this kind of thing to keep the Disney brand rolling. And that's what's happening is they're taking their property, which is the Lion King, the original one, and enhancing it for a new generation. Now, if that gets people into watching the old ones too, and then they get a whole new energy for all of the old animated movies and everything, because I don't know if they're going to redo everything. I don't know if they're going to go and do Bambi now, but maybe. I hope not. I hope they'd leave some of the properties alone. But in the same vein, if they redo it and they put as much effort, time, and money and getting good actors as they did with this, then why not? It's okay to rehash some of this stuff. And it's not just Disney doing it. I mean, how many movies are remake of older movies? Even if they change the name and tweak the story a little bit, many of these things are not new. I mean, The Lion King is a Shakespeare story. So it's been done how many times?
One of the things that did work for me, at least, was we had a very, very different voiceover cast than the last go, with Donald Glover replacing Matthew Broderick, Beyonce taking over for Maura Kelly. Ryan, who were some of your MVPs of the movie and which characters fell flat for you?
Let's see. I mean, I think MVPs were Seth Rogen and what's his name, Billy Eichner. I think they were hilarious. And I think they, brought life to it in a way that I think a lot of the movie did kind of not quite have that extra, it ever kind of goes into that extra gear. It's hard to say that anyone fell flat because I felt like all the performances were fine. But I think that I outside of them, I don't know that anybody really took it into that next gear. Yeah, it's hard to say. I feel like there was maybe just the vocal performances weren't able to replace what we couldn't get from the animation. Like the animation is so realistic, but we couldn't get that emotion in the animation, and we needed that through the vocal performances, and we didn't get that. And so I don't know that anyone was disappointing necessarily. I just feel like nobody grabbed the ball and ran with it in a way that would have really, like even thinking of like Into the Spider-Verse, which I know we keep going back to, but like I'm thinking like Kingpin and how great he was and how great, just everyone was in that. And, those vocal performances alone were amazing, not to mention the animation, and where this just doesn't quite get that level of like, it just doesn't get that out of the performances.
Well, I think that there were a lot of good things. My absolute MVP, and maybe it's because I was a big fan of the original, is James Earl Jones coming back as Mufasa. There is no more iconic voice in our generation than James Earl Jones. It just his deep baritone and just how his voice rumbles from this to Darth Vader and all kinds of other roles that he's done. His voice literally just sticks out. So that one was huge for me. And I'll agree with Ryan that Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner were great as Timon and Pumbaa. But honestly, I wasn't all that thrilled with Beyonce's performance as Nala when she wasn't singing. It seemed like it was too much Beyonce and not enough Nala. And that was a problem I had with it. But overall, most of the stuff was voiced very well. I think the other one that maybe I didn't like was John Oliver's Zazu. And maybe it's because of how they wrote Zazu in this. I didn't think was all that great.
That's a good point. I kind of just kept thinking, because I watched the show on HBO, and I kept thinking, oh, that's John Oliver when he's going to go into his like monologue or whatever. And it just felt like it was too John Oliver. You know?
Well, he kind of did when he did the news a little bit.
Yeah,
yeah. Cheetahs never win. Actually, he was one of the parts of the movie that I really enjoyed. I liked Donald Glover a lot. I almost thought her voice was too strong. But James Earl Jones actually, even though he was kind of recurring in the role as Mufasa, he kind of took me out of it because every time he talked, all I heard was Darth Vader, especially when he fell off the cliff. All I was saying, I just sat in the theater going, no, because that's all I could hear. I enjoyed the cast very much. Seth Rogen was hilarious. Overall, it worked for me. Ryan, I can see what you're saying about them not kicking it up to another gear, but at the same time, I thought it was enough. I'm not walking away saying people deserve an Emmy or an Academy Award for this, but I thought it was enough, and I thought it was just compelling enough that I walked out of there kind of feeling got my money's worth. IG, Scar's plan was to replace Mufasa was actually quite ingenious, luring him into a dangerous situation, getting him injured before encountering him and before making his move. But he had Simba right in front of him. Why stick the hyenas on him? Why not just kill him right then and there?
Yeah, that kind of bothered me in the original too. It's like, tell him to run and then send the hyenas. They did it in both times. And I'm like, you're a big lion. That's not your cub. Is there some kind of weird thing where if you come back smelling like Simba's blood that they're going to know you did something? Maybe. But something's weird about it. I mean, I guess maybe because we think about these people as more human because of the voices that we think about those things. And maybe there's reasons in the animal kingdom, or really it just works better for the story coming out of Macbeth, which is where this comes from. Or is it Hamlet? No, it's Macbeth. And, if you kill your brother, you can't kill the son as well, because that just makes the story not as fun. I don't know. I mean, in realistic terms, if you're going to kill one and have the other one right there in front of you, you just kill them too and go back and say, oh, they got killed. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, there's no forensic team saying that they just didn't get trampled. And by the way, that was the longest stampede known to man. That literally took an hour and a half. And what made me laugh was that one steer that came running 20 minutes after everybody else. What was that guy doing? I mean, did they wake him up from a nap? Just don't know where he came from. Ryan, I was actually kind of surprised with the amount of humor in the movie, mostly from Timon and Pumbaa, a little bit from Zanzu. But does it dispel the preconceived notion that animals can't be funny? Did the humor work for you in the movie?
Yeah, the humor worked. Like I said, Timon and Pumbaa were great. I think there's a formula to Disney movies, whether they're the animated rehashed animated movies or Marvel. And I think part of that formula for all these movies is adding humor and adding comedy, and they just do it at different levels. Sometimes I kind of turn the dial up way high. Other times it's down a little bit, but there tends to be a good deal of humor in these movies now. And I think what's interesting is that, in the past it was, and it still can be sophomoric, and there are plenty of fart jokes and, kind of sophomoric jokes to go around. But at the same time, there definitely it seems to be, for a lot of these movies, elevated humor and a real sense of humor and real comedy actors either performing and or writing some of this stuff. So I think, that way it worked really well. And again, I think where it does really work for me, I think, is in the humor, and that it does seem to add a little bit more than we had in the in the original.
The soundtrack was pretty massive back in the day, with help from Elton John, Timothy Rice, and Hans Zimmer. And without even seeing the movie, I knew the songs as much as anybody that had. There was a little variation in the way they were presented to us this time, but were you glad that they kept these classic songs in the movie?
I think it's the right move. A little bit different arrangement, a little bit different tempo in a couple of them, but mostly they were just on point. So what happens then is you have all these parents that grew up with The Lion King, watched it, loved it, and then they take their kids to see it, and it's familiar to them, and they can basically sing along with the stuff going on while the movie's going, and they're just happy. And if you take that away, you make it less of a happy time. The songs are great. You know, they're written by great artists with Elton John, and you can't take that away. And letting a new generation get these songs with voices they're used to hearing, with Beyonce and Donald Glover and everything else, putting that back into them means both generations can enjoy it, which is just a beautifully smart move. So I think it was absolutely essential that they don't change it too much, that they don't take those away. There's a little bit different in it. It's some different instruments and things used, a little bit different tempo, but it's just great to listen to. And I loved the familiarity with all of the songs being basically rehashes of it, remixes.
Ryan, your thought on the final battle, the movie, and your rating?
Throughout the movie, there are spots where you can make it different and change it, and maybe there was a moment there for them to make some kind of a change. So I just feel like it was underwhelming. It was a little too similar, too much like the original. As a movie, it's this weird mix because I think it's brilliant visually. The performances are solid to really good. The vocal performances are good, but again, there's that, just like I mentioned, visually having a hard time. It's kind of hard hearing some of these iconic songs that you've grown up with subtly different. It's like listening to, remixed album of something that, you really liked. And, I wasn't the biggest Lion King fan. Like Aladdin was far and away my favorite Disney movie. And I kind of resented the Lion King for taking away a lot of Aladdin's luster back in the day. I just had a hard time. It's like, I kind of have to watch it again and maybe a couple times and remove that part of my brain that wants to compare it to the original. Maybe that's part of it and part of why I kind of am a little resistant. Even again, I wasn't the biggest fan of the original, but it's so iconic musically and visually in the story that it doesn't do enough to really separate itself to be its own thing that stands on its own. But that being said, it's still a very good movie. So I'd give it a 7. It's definitely not as bad as I think a lot of the reviews are. And hey, it's making a shit ton of money. So I don't think Disney cares about, low Rotten Tomato score or a couple of bad reviews. But yeah, I think a 7 is right where it should be.
So I think the final battle followed right alongside with the animated final battle, the original. But it was really well done. It was cool to look at, fun to see, and really well done for a quote unquote live action CGI fest animated movie. So I enjoyed it. And generally, overall, the acting was done well. The voice acting was where it needed to be. The songs were done very well. Like I said, a couple of people took me out a little bit. Beyonce is such an iconic voice in our generation that hearing her be Beyonce as a lion just kind of threw me off a little bit, but I was able to kind of keep it together. Donald Glover, I think, has just done enough other acting things that I'm able to separate him a little bit more because, like, besides this, Beyonce hasn't done many actual acting things since, Goldmember? So there are some things that I have issues with, but they're generally pretty minor issues. This is a really pretty well done remake of an iconic movie, and I really did enjoy it. So you know what? I'm going to give it a 7.5. It's not better than that. I don't honestly think that it's even better than the original, but I think it's right where it needs to be to bring a new group of people into the Disney atmosphere.
For not having one actual living creature, I found myself emotionally invested in Simba's fight against Scar. I'm not going to lie. And I was rooting for the lions to prevail over the hyenas. And for someone who couldn't stomach the original, I'd have to say the live action film made me a fan of this Disney movie. It's just more attractive to someone like me. Despite the musical elements, I enjoyed The Lion King very much. I don't think it needed to be different from the original. I think that it did everything it needed to do to be a fun movie, an enjoyable movie, and it's just going to make a ton of money. Given the experience I had with this, I'll definitely go see the rest of these Disney properties if they transform them into a more of a live action setting, and especially if they have Jon Favreau directing. I give The Lion King a 7.5. It's summer, and the one thing that you can always expect is the obnoxious hot weather and the huge news dropping from the geek mecca known as San Diego Comic-Con. Let's talk about some of the big things coming, the movie trailers, and what was hot this past weekend. Let's get to the trailers first. We got a good look, IG, at Westworld Season 3. A lot of Dolores, a lot of Maeve, and it looks like those two are on very different journeys, but there could be a collision course in their future. The previous trailers have been kind of vague, only showing us a little bit of Aaron Paul. Did this Comic-Con trailer get you revved up for Season 3 of Westworld?
It absolutely did, and that's one of the things I've really enjoyed Westworld thus far. I think it's been not only confusing but intriguing all at the same time. So I keep wanting to watch to find out what in God's name is going on with this show. And I like that. It keeps me thinking. So about half and half. Half of my TV is watching just mindless. I don't care what's happening. It's just keeping me occupied and entertained. And the other half, I want to actually think. Honestly, Westworld is you got to pay attention. You can't sit and play a game on your phone while you watch it because you're going to miss something critical that's going to come into play 6 episodes later. And I'm amped and ready for the next season of Westworld. Based on this last trailer, I am super excited because I thought they were going to get completely away from the Westworld part of it, and it looks like that's not completely the case.
Yeah, it looks like Maeve is kind of hanging around inside the park, but in different areas, which is kind of cool. And now, Ryan, I know that we've spoken in the past that Aaron Paul kind of took you out of the trailers, but now that you've seen more of the original cast, did it rev you up for Westworld Season 3?
Yeah, it did. I think a part of it, was that we didn't get much of the original cast. And so it just seemed like it was like Chappie with Aaron Paul. That was what I kept thinking, seeing it. But now it felt like, okay, he's a bit player. He's another character, but this is, Maeve and Dolores' show, and Bernard. And so I'm excited. I think this season is going to make or break the show. To me, I think, season 1 was great. Season 2 was really good. But, I think the show has a tendency to kind of go, be up its own ass and maybe kind of treat itself like it's better than it is, in a weird, but, and so my hope is that, they kind of can lean into the things that were good about the show and not kind of, not seem like it wants to be better than it really is, if that makes any sense, which probably doesn't. But whatever the case is, I'm excited, but I do think like either the show is going to, be another, Game of Thrones level after this season, or we end the season like up, could have been great, but, it dropped the ball.
Well, they got to untangle the plot a little bit. I love that about Season 1. I loved trying to figure out what I was looking. In Season 2, it became a hindrance to watching the show and understanding it. And I didn't like Season 2 as much as I like Season 1. So I'm hoping they kind of return to form in Season 3. IG, after Game of Thrones ended, the masses looked up to the sky and asked, is HBO finished? And the answer is most definitely no. With this chaotic trailer for its new show, The Watchmen, which pits mass vigilantes versus cops versus criminals. Who will be watching The Watchmen? Will it be you?
Oh, it will absolutely be me. And that's the thing. Like when the original movie came out for The Watchmen, I saw the trailer for it, and I went out and I bought the comic, and I read the comics, and I was so excited for the movie to come out. And then the movie kind of fell flat based on what happened in the comics and what was happening on screen. This looks to be a lot more accurate, and having a lot more things to do with how things were in the comics, which, being Walking Dead fans, that's what we've been hoping for there all along. But looks like that's what we're actually going to get. We're going to get stuff from source material made live action. And Watchmen stuff looks absolutely amazing. So home run HBO, I'm hoping this is going to hit as hard as it should. And it really should just do amazingly well.
Ryan, with a cast with Louis Gossett Jr., Jeremy Irons, Don Johnson, Regina King, are you ready for this show to come out?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm one of the few that like the original movie, I think more than most. It was kind of it was almost like Zack Snyder. I almost tried too hard to make it, kind of shot for shot with the comics, but, I like where I think they're going with this, and yeah, like I said, like the comics, it's one of the best. I mean, it's ranked as like one of the greatest pieces of literature, not just for graphic novels, and with good reason. And I hope that they're able to kind of, take this show takes that to the next level. And, I'm not sure exactly where in the kind of continuity of it is, but I'm hoping, just hope that it looks really good. And there's a lot you can do with that world and with those characters. And I'm excited. And again, yeah, it looks like HBO, has a good deal of Game of Thrones successors on the table for us. So, we'll have no shortage of stuff to talk about be excited about.
I'm definitely excited for this one, mostly because Trent Reznor's doing the soundtrack, which I absolutely love. But it does look like the perfect combination of what took place in the comic books and the movie, which I actually like the movie quite a bit. And it brought Jeffrey Dean Morgan onto my radar, which I'm forever grateful for. Just looks like it's going to be a hit, and it looks different from everything else that's out there as far as superhero properties. So I'm excited for it. Ryan, one of the big stories dropping out of Cali this weekend was a good portion of the cast and crew of Game of Thrones showed up to say goodbye to the fans, except your boys, the showrunners, D&D, who were scheduled and then no-showed. What can we take from that?
I was disappointed. I feel like, they should have gone out there and made their case. It was their show. It's sad that whatever you think of the last season, it's sad that they're getting so much flack considering, that they put on, again, if you hated the last 2 seasons, they still put on 6 of the greatest seasons of TV we have ever seen and probably will ever see, and they're not. And again, I really enjoyed a lot of the last season, as you guys know, it had its faults, but I think even if you didn't like it, I think they don't deserve the kind of vitriol they're getting over it. And I wish that they would have been able to show up and make their case, because then it kind of feels like they bought into it, or they're just too scared to talk about it. And I feel like they would have gotten love in that, in that hall. And I don't think that it would have been a bad experience. So I kind of disappointed that they dropped out.
Yeah, I was too. I really don't think they have a lot to apologize for. There was a few decisions that didn't sit well with me. Overall, I like the season and I like the show. And IG, you and I are sports fans, and you know that if you win, you make yourself accessible to the people and the reporters to tell your side. And if you lose, you still got to be out in that hallway telling your side of the story. Do you feel that they should have showed up?
They should have absolutely shown up. If nothing else, to tell people about some of the new exciting things that they're probably working on, because they've been given deals to do a Game of Thrones spinoff from HBO. They've been given deals from Disney to make a new Star Wars property. They could have pitched other things that they have coming up, and then they could have shown that they're proud of their work, because what I think it really showed when they don't show up is maybe they're second guessing themselves. And yeah, there's a lot of bad mouth coming out of all corners of the internet, but that's all corners of the internet. That happens on literally everything. Literally happened on The Lion King weeks before it was released, because people were like, this is unnecessary, so I'm going to give it a 0 on Rotten Tomatoes, which is why it has a 50-some rating. But all they got to do is show up, own their work, and if people don't like it, that's fine. There are still people alive today that were alive when I was a child that saw the original Star Wars and didn't like it. That kind of stuff is going to happen. Does it make it any less good? No. So show up, own what you did, and move forward.
Jumping on the nostalgia train, Ryan, one of the great movie trailers that also dropped this weekend took us all the way back to 1986. It was the trailer for Top Gun Maverick. Are you willing to jump back onto the highway to the danger zone with Tom Cruise for this one?
It's funny. Like I had no interest when I heard that it was being remade, but it definitely hit me in the, like, it tapped into that nostalgia button. Like, I was the right age. I watched Top Gun 1,000 times. I loved the song, the soundtrack. And so, they got me with the trailer. So like, I went from like, don't care. I saw the trailer. I was like, fine, I'm going to have to go see this stupid movie. Tom Cruise does it again.
What bothers me is he's not aged a bit from the movie all the way back in 1986. So we should start looking into what he's eating, and maybe Scientology is the way. Yeah. But I'm the same way. When I heard about it, I'm like, why are they doing this? And as soon as I heard the song, and as soon as I saw him standing there and him being dressed down by his superior, I was like, all right, just take my money. I'll be there opening day. How about you, IG?
Yeah, it hit me right in the feels, because I remember like listening to the cassette of Top Gun soundtrack over and over and over again growing up, and basically wearing it out. And it was one of my most favorite movies, and it's probably the reason I ride motorcycles, watching him ride around on that old Ninja of his. It really is just doing the right thing. And yeah, it's a cash grab. It absolutely has to be a cash grab. I mean, Tom Cruise, I don't know why he's doing a cash grab, because he's got $82 billion and half of Scientology owed to him. But, Why not? If you're going to do it well, which it looks like they're in the stages of doing, they're going to do it really well, then why not? The same thing with Lion King. They did that well. They're making money. So if we can get Top Gun Maverick and it's going to be really well done, I'm totally on board. And so far, from just that little bit of trailer, I'm totally on board.
Our generation's answer to Cheech and Chong are back with a reboot, as our lovable losers are once again off to stop a reboot of a movie that they stopped before, of a comic that they were based after. After lots and lots and lots of cameos, IG, did this trailer have you screaming Snoochie Boochies? Are you ready to ride again with Jay and Silent Bob?
You know, as long as he doesn't make another Tusk or whatever the hell that mess of shit was, or what was it, the hockey hosers or something.
Yoga hosers.
That thing was awful. As long as he gets back into where his wheelhouse lives, which is honestly Jay and Silent Bob movies, because if they're movies that can have those in them, like Clerks, Clerks 2, Dogma, Chasing Amy, all those things, when you can have Jay and Silent Bob there, you know what? His movies do pretty well, and I enjoy them. So, yeah, I'm Snoochie Boochies all the way along. I'll be there to see it. Now, part of what caught me is it seemed like they're not doing a wide theatrical release on this. They're kind of taking it around like they did with Red State. I'm hoping that it gets picked up by somebody and actually gets a release.
One of the things that disappointed me, because I don't ever find out about the stuff till it's over, was he is reading Clerks 3, the script, to a theater full of people. And I wish I could have been there for that. But I am excited for this Jay and Silent Bob reboot. A little bit too much Jason Mewes in the trailer, and his acting is really, really bad. I wish Silent Bob would kind of drop the stick and speak more, because Kevin Smith isn't a terrible actor when he bothers to act. I wasn't crazy with the fact that his daughter was in this one, but I don't know how many movies he has left. So if he's going to serve as his family, all the better. But the cameos did look fun, and we are going to get a little Ben Affleck back in our life as far as in the Smith universe. So I'm happy about that. All in all, another movie that didn't fall flat for me that I'll be there right away to see. Ryan, Arnold didn't lie to us. He said he'd be back, and he will. We get a powerful new Terminator trailer with lots of action. The danger is turned up to 11. Can the franchise become relevant again after a few missteps?
I'd like to think so, but I don't think so. We had one of an all-time great movie, and I want to like this, and the trailer's not bad. Like, I haven't watched the trailer and thought, okay, either the trailers have come out and thought, okay, this is, this doesn't look good. It might, but I just feel like 1 and 2 were just so good. 2 is just such a phenomenal movie. It's, again, kind of right time and age for me. Holds up, amazing story, still amazing visuals, that I just don't see the point in even trying. You should just leave it alone. And I'll be there. I'll probably be there opening week, and I'll see it, and I'll hold out hope, again, for this one, at least it kind of erases everything after Terminator 2. And so we really get a true, kind of sequel to that. And based on the vision, I guess, of James Cameron, or at least he's involved. I'm hoping that it will be a true sequel and something that really lives up to the Terminator name. But I just feel like Terminator 2 is so great that I don't see a reason to stay in that world, except that you want to make some money.
Well, we're getting more Linda Hamilton. We're getting Eddie Furlong. I'm not sure if anybody asked for that, but one of the big additions to the franchise that I saw is Mackenzie Davis, who's one of my favorite up and coming actresses. And if you haven't ever seen her, she's the lead in *Halt and Catch Fire* on AMC, which I think just ended a year or so ago. But she is a great actress, a great look, and an interesting person to watch. I love the fact that they brought Arnold back. How could you make a Terminator movie without it? And it's being directed by Tim Miller, who directed the original Deadpool movie, and it's written by James Cameron. I can't ask for more out of this property. What do you think, IG?
I think the pieces are all in place, so I'm going to withhold judgment. If I'm just going to base purely on the trailer and the knowledge of who's going to be in it, it's a go for me. Let's do it. Let's get in the theater and watch it 20 times. But Arnold is old. Quite simply, he doesn't look like a Terminator looks anymore, because I have this mental image of Arnold in his prime, just stacked and buff and looking like a machine. And there aren't enough steroids in the world to get Arnold to look like that again, because he's like 90. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that it all works out well, because all the tools are there. You have a good director. You have a good writer who's known for doing good things with his properties. You've got all of the stars from all the original things coming back. So at this point, I'm excited, and I'm hoping it's all going to work out really well. I'm just holding a little bit of judgment until it actually comes out.
Marvel was there announcing stuff left and right, just a slew of content coming, shows, movies, but its chief competitor, DC, had a small TV presence, but no movie. It decided not even to make the drive to San Diego. Are they waving the white flag? Has Fergie and company finally won this war? Is DC dead?
I mean, I don't think there was ever a war. DC is being smarter about, I think, how they're going about this. And I think it makes sense. DC's certainly not dead. But I don't think there was ever a war between them and Marvel, at least not, once the MCU got running. I think they attempted it with Batman versus Superman and Justice League. And I think they went the wrong route. Like DC has its characters and has iconic characters that stand alone. And I think they tried to rush this expanded universe, which isn't necessary, which is why I like that they seem to be focusing on what makes them strong. I'm really excited about the Joker movie that's coming up. Despite casting of Batman, I'm excited about this Batman movie coming up. I love the director. I'll reserve judgment for what's his name as Batman, Robert Pattinson. He's really not that bad of an actor. And if he's a young Batman and they lean into the detective stuff, I'm excited. I think it's going to be, I'm okay with it, and, I'm excited about the new Suicide Squad, especially with James Gunn involved. So I think DC realized that they needed to slow down and lean into their own strengths. Hopefully they focus on making good movies and not trying to catch Marvel, because it's not possible. It's not worth it. And I think, again, they have great characters. So focus on great characters, make great movies, and don't worry about having some interconnected huge universe. Is just not worth it.
IG, the Fallout had to go all the way to Minnesota because Marvel dropped a content bomb, giving us a rough schedule of what they expect for Phase 4. Which of the shows and movies are you excited about, and which ones not so much?
Well, I'm excited to see what they can do with a Black Widow movie, and that's kind of the first thing on the calendar. And I'm really excited for the next Thor one because they got Taika Waititi back doing that. So, like, the bookends of what they announced are where I'm most excited. I'm pretty excited about the Disney Plus show What If, because that just kind of opens a whole bunch of possibilities. And what my understanding is going to be mostly animated, but with the voices of people that played characters in the MCU. And then there's some things that I'm like, I don't know what's going on with this, like WandaVision. I'm hoping that they're able to do something really impressive with it, but I'm not sure they're going to be able to. And then Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I don't know the property. And I'm hoping that along with some other properties that Marvel has put out that isn't all that widely known amongst casual comic viewers, I'm hoping that it ends up being just something amazing. Guardians of the Galaxy is a huge property now, but it really wasn't known to very many people before it was released in theaters. So I'm hoping they kind of capture that kind of vibe and are able to get people interested in something that nobody knows what the hell it is. So there's a lot of good things coming. I'm pretty well excited, but the problem is this with the slate is at least half of everything they put in the slate is all Disney Plus stuff. So they're really leaning into trying to sell that as a property and make us all buy another subscription service. And I'm hoping that there'll be apps released for smart TVs and Fire Sticks and everything else so that I can watch it on something that isn't a computer, so I can put it on the big TV. But yeah, there's some really exciting things coming. And then they started talking at the end of their panel about things they didn't even have time to talk about, like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Fantastic Four, So I don't know. I only see what they put their dates on, and from what they put their dates on, most of it I'm ready for and I'm excited for.
How about you, Ryan? You've seen the schedule. What do you think?
Well, it's funny that I didn't care for a Blade movie until they announced Mahershala Ali as Blade, and it's like, yeah, it's perfect. I'm in. I want to see Blade now. My favorite characters, thus far have been kind of the Guardians and this most recent iteration of Thor, Iron Man, Spider-Man. So I was hoping to get as Guardians of the Galaxy. Like I was hoping they would actually like announce that Thor was going to be part of Guardians 3, but this next Thor with it, Taika Waititi is involved. Great. I'm in. Ragnarok was one of the best Marvel movies after, the first two Thor movies to me were just, maybe not terrible, but were not good at all. So I'm in for that. So that was one of my, probably my favorite. Yeah. Seeing that, they're going to have Natalie Portman and Tessa Thompson, that she'll be back and they'll be heavily, involved in it. I'm excited about that. So I think Thor is one of the better ones. I'm interested in Falcon Winter Soldier. Like I'm interested in seeing that. And I guess, with Falcon getting the shield and kind of taking over the Captain America mantle, they can have kind of like a buddy cop vibe. I'm actually, that's one of the more exciting ones for me. And yeah, I'm not super excited about WandaVision, though I am excited that they're saying Doctor Strange is going to be the first real horror movie. That's interesting. So yeah, there's a lot to be, more than anything, and Eternals has one of the best casts of any of these movies. So, I think there's more than like the super excitement. None of this has maybe brought this level of excitement that you got when you heard about like Civil War and all the characters that were going to be in it, or Infinity War. Replacing that is just, it's really intriguing. It's like they can go a lot of places with this that may make this phase of it even more interesting than the last few, where the last few had these kind of great, this guy's battling that guy. Like this is just like, wow, where are they going to go with this stuff? Like this could be, they could actually make some really interesting, unique films and take the MCU, almost anywhere. So I'm just kind of excited to see the decisions they make. And I hope they don't make safe decisions. I hope they kind of take some chances and really take some risks at this point.
Well, they had me with Thor right away. As soon as I found out that the director was coming back to write and direct the movie, I'm all about that. And I want to see what they do with the female Thor character. And the Doctor Strange thing really interests me. I want to see which way they do with it. And Scarlet Witch is going to be involved, which I love. I know nothing about the Eternals. I kind of wish it was the Inhumans, but they seem to go around and look for every A-list actor that they haven't grabbed yet, and they threw it into the Eternals. Shang-Chi, to me, seems like an Asian cash grab, although they did say something about the Mandarin being in it so they can kind of fix the sins of Iron Man 3 a little bit. I have no interest in WandaVision. I don't care about the relationship. I love Scarlet Witch, and I much would have rather see this be Wanda and Quicksilver if they could have done it in some way. And Falcon and Winter Soldier looks awesome, and I can't wait for it. IG, we also got a little bit of tease at the end for the Fantastic Four and some mutants that we may know their names, but they're not going to bring them up at this point. Can Marvel reboot these franchises that are simply amazing, but frankly just worn out, and make them new and lovable again?
Well, one of the things I think they're doing that I think is the smartest move to do is that they're seeing that the X-Men in particular have had a lot of movies put out. So they're giving them a little bit of a breath before they recast them and get going back in that. So that's going to be a really smart move because they're not going to get Hugh Jackman back. So they're going to need to recast it. And the only way that you can make that work is by giving it some time. Because then people are going to go, well, Hugh Jackman's 70. Same thing with Arnold. I get it. But, it's a way that you can get past that. Now, Fantastic Four has never been done well. And I can't believe they got a second movie out of the original cast with now Captain America. But they did. They got two movies out of that, and neither one was great. The first one was okay. The second one was pretty bad, and the third one was god-awful. So I'm hoping that they're able to actually get some good casting. I saw a picture that somebody mocked up with Halpert, what's
John
his
Krasinski?
name from John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, and that looks quite honestly amazing. I would watch that.
They had his wife Emma Blunt as Sue Storm, and that looked pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, I would absolutely watch that.
Yeah, I could see him playing Mr. Fantastic. I think that these franchises do need a break, and one of the disappointing things was rather than Shang-Chi, I would have liked to get another Ant-Man movie or something else familiar on the docket. I didn't care too much about a Black Widow movie. I love Doctor Strange. I love Thor, but I thought we should have brought back one of the original heroes and stuck him in there somewhere, especially since most of the slate was TV shows. But it does seem like a hell of a lot of content for us to cover, so I'm thankful for that. Ryan, lastly, we got to look at The Walking Dead Season 10 trailer. The Whispered War is in full flight. We got some cool new weapons, including Aaron having a battle arm. And there looks like there might be a new queen in town, as Michonne and the King might be in some sort of item. Did the trailer bring you new hope for one of our favorite content providers, The Walking Dead?
It wasn't bad. I enjoyed the second half of last season. I think it was better than the last few years of the show. And I think the trailer didn't give me reason to be more excited, but it didn't give me reason to worry. We'll see. I'm concerned that Michonne's leaving. I'm just overall concerned that characters are dropping left and right. Will Maggie be back? And do I even care? And who do I care about anymore? Will the show stay consistent as the last half season? So until I get a solid year of the show, I'm not going to be overly excited. We'll see. I hope it's good. And the trailer didn't give me any reason to not be excited, but it also didn't give me, there was nothing in it that made me think, okay, wow, I'm ready. I can't wait till October, whatever, when the season premieres.
Honestly, the trailer looked good, and it gave me some new hope. But then along with the trailer came a bunch of news about people leaving. And then we've got news a couple months ago about the comics going to end. So source material is going to go away. So we're nearing the end of The Walking Dead, which if they're not going to right the ship in some of the things now, like Ryan said, the last half of the last season was amazing and it was the best that they've done in years. But they're running out of material and they're burning through it like they just are ready to be done. Kind of like how they started to burn through things in Game of Thrones because they were ready to be done. So I'm afraid that they're going to take things that should take a while and burn through them and not give us time to relish in whatever they're doing. Based on the trailer alone, I'm excited. And I'm hoping that they slow down this news cycle of all the bad things that are going to happen with the comic ending and actors leaving and everything else happening.
Yeah, I kind of wish that they would keep that under wraps a little bit. I mean, we all knew Michonne was leaving the show. It came out last season, and that's a hit. The show, I don't know if they can recover, even though it's a large ensemble cast. I loved the dynamic of Carol and Daryl during that and her giving him a hard time about him calling her his best friend. I love the new weapons, the shields. Looks like we're going to get a lot of Oceanside this time around, which could be kind of interesting because visually that worked last time. I kind of hope that they don't drag another season or two out of The Walking Dead. But if they do, I want it to go out with grace. I don't want it to be canceled. I don't want it to end on a cliffhanger. I want it to end on its own terms. So if they're going to do it, they need to do it soon. But Negan looks like he's going to be out this season and kicking some ass. And I'm all for that. Give me a little bit of Negan in my life, just swinging a bat or a crowbar and hitting people upside the head. One of the big news that we found out that I was very unhappy about is, as we feared, these Rick Grimes movies are going to be theatrical releases. So they're selling us the end of his story, which couldn't piss me off any more than they already have with this whole debacle.
And that's it. You made it to the end of another episode of the Cinik Radio podcast. I'm Igrihe, here with Cinik, who you can find at CINIKRADIO.com. Also, we had Ryan, who you can find at thejimwits.com, and Kim, who you can find at KMCArtworks.com. Great artists. Go check out some really cool stuff. We'll be back next week with some new stuff for you. Probably some news as well. Send your crazy news stories, any comments, questions, and concerns to us at CinicRadio@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at CinicRadio.com. Look for us on Facebook at Facebook.com/CinicRadio. Find us on Twitter at CinicRadio. And find us on Instagram at CinicRadio. You can also head over to tpublic.com, search for Cinik, CINIK, and get your own Cinik Radio podcast gear. T-shirts, mugs, cups, stickers, all the cool Cinik Radio podcast stuff you could possibly want. It'd help the show, and we would greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for all the love and support. Keep listening, sharing it with your friends, like, listen, and subscribe. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CinicRadio.com. Available for download on iTunes.